Thanks for coming back. And I see Mr. Zabriskie. Well, actually, we're not online yet. So good morning, Sarah. Good morning, Paul. And
We are going live.
okay, it's 9 o'clock. Here we go. Good morning. It's Friday, February 19th, 9:01 a.m. This is a meeting of Senate Natural Resources and Energy. We're continuing our work on weatherization. And this morning we're meeting with the people who deliver the weatherization assistance program to Vermonters and to talk to them to learn more about how their operations work and how the money flows through the system, because we want to be able to pick up the pace of this work, and we want to be well informed about what the current system does and where there's opportunities to grow that system and support that system as we ask it to get more done. How do we productively partner with them to help them succeed in carrying out that mission? So I had asked Ms. Phillips to come back again this morning and help us understand the relationships between the state and all the community action agencies and partners and programs that need to work well together in order to continue to support them and grow them. So good morning, Ms. Phillips. Thanks for coming back. The floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Senator Bray. Good morning. For the record, Sarah Phillips, the Director of the Office of Economic Opportunity in the Department for Children and Families, and our office administers the Low-Income Home Weatherization Assistance Program. I have provided the committee with a couple, hopefully useful documents this morning to show how the money flows, as you laid out, Senator Bray. I'm happy to share my screen to just let the committee know those are there. Is that how this, what you would like me to do?
Yes, you can share your screen.
Great.
Okay, great. I will do that. Bear with me here. Okay, hopefully this is working. You're seeing this.
Right.
Okay, great.
We can see it.
Excellent. And I provided two documents. One is what we call our weatherization combined funding summary, and this can be a challenging document to orient to quickly, but I wanted to give it to the committee to be able to, this document answers a lot of questions about how the money works for the low-income, for the weatherization program, and how cash flows in and out of the program from different funding sources. So I'm not going to go through this one in detail, just to say that this shows how we track cash coming in and out of the program. We do have, we have sort of three main funding sources for the program. One is the Home Weatherization Assistance Program Special Fund or Trust Fund. That is the fuel tax revenue. It goes by different names, but essentially those funds. The other is LIHEAP federal funds that go to the program, and some of folks may remember that we actually swap funds with LIHEAP, the swap. So LIHEAP uses some of the, with permission from the legislature, it's built into the budget, uses funds for from the weatherization fuel tax revenue to support some of its administrative costs that go above and beyond what LIHEAP allows. And in return, the weatherization program receives LIHEAP funds to support weatherization activities. So that's a general fund savings to the state, and so that's reflected in this cash flow. The other is the U.S. Department of Energy Weatherization Program Funds, which is also here. So this cover sheet kind of outlines how cash flows in and out of the program, and then you can see additional detail looking at each of those different funds. So this is looking at fuel tax revenue. This sheet right here, is looking at the Department of Energy grant. This is looking at the LIHEAP in and out of the program. Just to say, the LIHEAP is a little bit the LIHEAP operates on the federal fiscal year, and we operate the weatherization program on the state fiscal year. So there's some just difference in terms of the timing of the cash expenditures. And then this sheet, which is hard to see unless you look more closely at it, is actually where we look at the cash receipts for the fuel tax revenue coming in and see where we're at and track that as well. So I provided this to, this is a level of detail that I think is perhaps beyond the scope of testimony this morning, but I wanted to make sure that the committee had the full information around the funding for weatherization.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So that sheet shows cash in and out, which, you know, we may have, based on how the program operates, we will make awards based on funding available in a year, but the timing of cash payments might actually hit in one fiscal year or the other, right? So it can be a little challenging to look at that sheet and understand the investments to the program. So this is looking at it a little bit differently. And in this, I've included the emergency heating system program, which is also in the other weatherization summary. So we also annually are authorized to spend $750,000 to operate the emergency heating system program. This provides heating system repair and replacement during emergencies, usually cold weather months, but there's some exceptions in other times of the year for folks, for vulnerable populations. And this does include also fuel tank issues when there's a no heat situation, when it's a true emergency. So we actually are seeing demand for that program going up, but that's in the weatherization depth ID, and so I just wanted to reflect that, even though it's not the core purpose of this conversation. So that you'll see that on here. But again, this sheet kind of reflects the three main funding sources and how that supports, you know, OEOs at the highest level, you know, personal and operating expenses, and then also the emergency heating system, and then core funding for the weatherization program. What you do see on here is a one-time investment that we made in our Hancock Energy software to make some really important upgrades. So our operating expenses, our investments in that this year are higher than they normally are, just to reflect that. It also, we're seeing an enormous demand on the emergency heating system program. That's not really reflected here in terms of what we actually expect to be needing for that. This chart also doesn't include the substantial private and one-time investments that we make in activities like vermiculite remediation or home repair, or some pilot work that we've been doing around healthy homes with CVOEO, Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, and some other partners. And so that's not reflected in here, even though that funding is really important. It also isn't going to match the other sheet because it's excluding sort of carry forward from the previous year. This is really more based on current level of new investments this year. And it also doesn't reflect, and this is where Capstone or CVOEO this morning are going to be able to talk, perhaps answer questions more about this, but it doesn't reflect other leveraged or program income that's received directly by agencies without going through OEO as an intermediary or administrator. So that might be, for instance, all of our weatherization agencies receive funding from Efficiency Vermont for electrical efficiency services. So when they're in the home as part of the weatherization process, they're able to also assess and help those households access other electrical efficiency measures that aren't really a part of our program, but it's like an add-on or a leveraged. And that funding doesn't flow through OEO, so we're not reflecting that to you here today. It also doesn't reflect other particular partnerships that exist in different parts of the state. For instance, CVOEO's partnership with Vermont Gas, or Capstone's work with Washington Electric around Tier 3 investments. So again, I haven't reflected those, but that is a part of the money flows conversation, I think. So I did also, just at a highest level, thought it could be helpful to show, you know, what are the funding sources in the current year and how does that break down. So this chart doesn't include the emergency heating system program. It's just sort of the core weatherization program, and kind of gives you a picture of how much funding is coming from which source. What also wasn't reflected on the other chart is the one-time funding appropriation of general fund that the legislature made a couple of years ago that we're still spending down. That was a $1.3 million one-time general fund investment. That is reflected in this chart. You'll see that that's about 5% overall this year. I think I've reflected back to this committee before, but just to remind you, we used those funds to pilot initiate a partnership with 3E Thermal to expand multifamily weatherization, and so they are essentially our 6th weatherization provider now, really focused just on the unique aspect of multifamily weatherization. We also use some of that one-time general fund to invest in Hancock as well through some through administration support for that. So this is sort of just a general kind of picture of how much funding from which source. And then this chart thought would be useful in terms of, again, thinking of the money coming in and then what is it going out to support. So again, this chart is not reflecting the emergency heating system program. It's just more looking at the core program. It also includes both OEO and the funds that go out in grants to our providers, right, our weatherization providers. So sometimes you're just wanting, or committees or legislators just wanting us to look at, certain elements. This is sort of the whole picture, which I think was part of the goal of this conversation this morning. So this is providing you the whole picture that includes OEO as well, and kind of shows some, at a high level, what percentage of funding is going to support some of these core areas. We can certainly break this down in lots of different ways. But you'll see, we do spend about 2% on in support of Hancock Energy Software. I think that's not unreasonable in my experience with other programs in terms of as a percentage of total program, and it gives us really important information to ensure that the work we do is quality and provide really important data about the program, including energy modeling. And very soon we'll be able to give us estimates as well around greenhouse gas reductions, which I know is something this committee is interested in us looking at. And then, efficiency coach services, I think we've talked about that in the past. That's sort of a separate piece. We do pull out truck replacement separately just because trucks are expensive and such a large item, and we don't necessarily tie back that directly to a specific job. So anyway, I will pause here before I go into talking a little bit more about training and technical assistance.
Sure. Senator Westman?
So, so how much is the efficiency coach services piece, and what does it entail again? Just to remind me.
Yeah, so this is, I might have to stop sharing my screen to pull up my actual budget to give you the dollar amount. Apologies about that. But Efficiency Coach Services, this is each of our weatherization agencies, and this is something that we initiated, I believe, Paul might have to correct me because he's been around longer than me, but during ERA with some funding during that expansion that we initiated this in recognition that when you weatherize someone's home, you're asking them to also change their behavior within that home to make those investments work, right? And that takes some level of one-to-one coaching. And I think also just helping people work through the process and understand what's going to happen, what's expected of them at different stages in the process. Efficiency Coach Services also are a part of what we call our one-touch referral process, where when we're in the home, and we're able to connect with households that we can screen them for a whole bunch of other human services and health and home programs that they might be eligible for and might really benefit them for. So we do that screening and referral process with a warm handoff. So that's another part of Efficiency Coaches Services. So each agency has an efficiency coach that is embedded in the process that sort of is there to just support the client through the process, coach them on energy, on changes in behavior, and then also support them in accessing other resources. And I will definitely follow up with
Yeah, that's really helpful. Here's where, with the new money coming in and where I'm reaching to understand. So there's efficiency coaches and the population that the community action agency serve, they would have these efficiency coaches in direct. In the new money that's coming from the governor, to do weatherization in the overall piece, and I've got VHFA getting a good chunk of that. They've got $1 million for direct outreach to individuals in it. Not necessarily the same income category of doing that, but I want to make sure that all of the outreach that's being done, because in some respects, it's not all the same programs, but a lot of the same stuff is being done, and you're utilizing the same people to do the work in some cases. I want to make sure how do I make sure it's seamless in all of that, going from one income category to the other, and make sure that we're building an overall picture. And direct outreach to people is really important in all of that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And we're actually nationally recognized for this program. Let me also brag about my team a little bit there. So I think we have a model that works exceptionally well. And I think, you know, as we think about building out that efficiency coach services more broadly in the field, I really appreciate that sort of holistic view, even though in our program we're focused on our part of the field. I mean, I certainly think we can partner around setting some standards for what that looks like. You know, the one-touch referral process that I mentioned is something that is standardized, that we very easily could be rolled out across you know, a broader array of agencies providing efficiency coach services. I do think community action agencies might be a great partner because they already do that work. So in terms of the implementation side of expanding that, you know, they could be a partner in that work. So I'm very open. I'm not sure that I have a sense of exactly what's being proposed as part of the VHFA initiative for this, but you know, very open to continuing to work with our colleagues at Efficiency Vermont and VHFA to think of that as you know, some standards for that service across the field.
I know you guys have moved in, you're doing good work here. Yeah, I just want to make sure that as we move through the income levels, we aren't repeating ourselves, and we're working, you know, as people move up in life, that, you know, just because you've gone over 80% of the median, and we've got new federal money coming down, I want to make sure that we're utilizing our services well and training people, and this direct outreach through all the levels is important.
Yeah, I agree. I couldn't agree more.
Can I follow up a little bit on that? And just so I sort of know the rules of the road here, the 80% AMI figure that we use so often, is that statutory for your mission? Is that federally defined?
Yeah, so we have, so our federal funding from the Department of Energy is actually at 200% of the federal poverty level, our federal poverty guidelines. So that's a slightly different measure around income eligibility. 200% of FPL is roughly the same as 60% state median income, not exactly, but that's sort of a rough estimate for you. And then it is defined in state statute that the weatherization program is up to 80% median income. The state statute also asks us or requires us to prioritize weatherization based on a number of other factors that look at, for instance, energy burden or utilization, LIHEAP recipients and so on. So there are some other things. It's not a first come, first served program. We do prioritize households based on statute.
Yep. And then another threshold we hear about is 120% of AMI. Is that maybe that's outside the realm you're working in, but do you know, is this a state defined threshold as well, or federal, or both, or?
Yeah, I mean, generally we use AMI as just one. The problem with the federal poverty guidelines is it's the same across the whole country, right? The difference in using the median income is it can vary by state and can vary by county and community. So we tend to like using median income. This is a broad statement, not about weatherization, but just about income eligibility for programs. So you'll hear people use median income a lot, and that really looks back at HUD, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, puts out information around median income. Different programs will be, folks will be eligible at 30% or 60% or 80% or 120%. Those are the normal thresholds. I could certainly, follow up with the committee and just kind of send a link so that folks can look at what do those numbers even mean in Vermont, right? But we tend to think of households below 30% area median income. We call those households very low income or extremely low income households. That tends to be, households that are, when in other hats that I wear in other programs working on homeless assistance, we are very often talking about making housing affordable for households below 30% AMI, because that is the population that's extremely vulnerable. Then you can bump up to, 80% area median income is still considered low income, right? But you're starting to get a little bit higher, and then 80 to 120 is what's considered moderate income generally. So, those are just kind of standard thresholds within programs that deal with income eligibility. But I'm happy again to send that a link to the committee so you guys can have those income levels at your fingertips.
Sure. And to continue to follow up on Senator Westman's line, like on the seamlessness side of things. When someone, gets to 85%, have they sort of graduated from your program, and did they end up losing eligibility to be working with your program or working through their local community action agency?
Yeah, this is the thing about any program that has income eligibility, right? There's a line, and yes, our program is for households at or below 80% AMI. And I think, so yes, if somebody that comes in at 82%, they're not eligible, but, we're also really great at making connections and referrals to other resources that people will be eligible for. There's short of not having income eligibility, it's just the way it works when you do that, right? You have a line.
Sure. Yeah.
So
yeah. Senator Westman.
So my question is that bright line that's drawn, are you, because of federal funds or let me say this another way. If VHFA was able to take part of their $1 million and contract with you to have someone, with money to do that, are you prohibited, or would the counselors in the CAP agencies be prohibited from continuing to work for statutory reasons or federal reasons? Or if they cross that line and there was money there to help through a contract, could they continue?
Yeah, absolutely. So this money, the money that currently goes in the program, would be restricted, right? But if if it was wholly funded, including like administration, all of these, right, items, if it was wholly funded by another funding stream, then certainly we have the mechanisms in place to, and the agencies could participate. That's not unlike, for instance, and again, maybe I'll point to Paul when he testifies for Capstone, right? They have a market-based social enterprise at Capstone, and they do work in the market, and it's wholly funded, not with this funding, but other funding sources, right? It's a social enterprise for-profit venture that supports the mission of their organization. So, yes, that is possible, and our agencies certainly can do that and are able to. There's nothing preventing them other than looking at their own mission, right, and their own work, and is it a fit within what that organization's mission is. But absolutely, our agencies do other work, and, you know, whether or not it would make sense for that funding to flow through OEO, I think we'd have to think more about. Part of our mission in the Low-Income Weatherization Program is not just about carbon reduction, right? It's not just about energy efficiency. It's also very much, this is a program about increasing affordability for low-income Vermonters. And that is why this program is so sweet and really has an impact. So I think we're a mission-driven program, and that is part of how we do our work. So, you know, so anyway, so I would just say that that would be a conversation that would have to, you know, involve other people. But
no, I get that. I'm just trying to see if we, how, when we do this, can we create? And certainly the HFA needs to watch out for the people that that they're going to try to serve. But I want a clear flow where these people don't get, I've hit this cliff and then I've hit another cliff. You know, how do we do this in a way that is seamless and we don't retrain people all over the place? We have some efficiencies to do that. So I want to throw this one other issue up. This committee is particularly interested in clean energy and how we do clean energy. Through your mission at OEO, you are about reducing energy use and reducing poverty, which I certainly don't want to get it. But when you reduce energy use, it reduces the pollutants that get put in the air. And it's become really pretty clear to me on this committee that we have this dual track where reducing carbon and reducing energy is walking hand in hand. Should not, in this world where we've changed, where that's becoming the norm, should it not be the goal of OEO to not only reduce that, but direct people towards clean energy? And because that's all for the health of all of us, including the people you're serving. So should that not be something that OEO thinks about in its mission statements and its guiding principles going down through the organization?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is inherent in what we do. I think, Senator Westman, that's your point. It's certainly inherent in what we do. You know, we're a program with multiple values and trying to achieve multiple goals. You know, if that's not explicit in there, certainly we could think about that. You know, we also recognize that one of the major benefits of weatherization is to improve the health of people's homes. Actually, there's big national studies that show that that's actually where the biggest impact is. So that, you know, we have added that more explicitly in how we talk about our program as well, and certainly can. I think I mentioned that, you know, we very shortly will be able to use Hancock to show specifically greenhouse gas reductions, right, carbon reductions, so look at measuring that explicitly. I think it's in there implicitly, but I think your point is to make it more explicit, and certainly I think, you know, that makes sense to me. You know,
I think that goes right in with strengthening the community, which is part of your mission.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I don't have a problem thinking that that is a part of our goal. I think when we get down to sort of program policy and implementation, there can be tensions there, right? Because we need to think about the transition in our in the climate transitions in terms of equity as well. And we're not going to be pushing a low-income homeowner towards electrification if it's going to increase their annual cost by $3,000 and we don't have a way to otherwise support that, right? So, but that's, I think, more in the level of implementation and a broader conversation around policy and program. I think your point around should it be explicitly part of our goals, then yes, I think that's fine, and we certainly can think about adding that into the language that we use.
Thank you.
Senator McCormick? Your microphone is not on yet, sir.
Is it on now?
Yes, sir.
I'm on now. Right? Okay. I just want to endorse Senator Westman's remarks and amplify a little bit on it. We tend to think, for all the talk about multitasking, we tend to think about one thing at a time. And often, if, for example, we're talking about low-income people staying warm this winter, and you start to talk about global warming, there's a tendency of some of our colleagues to say, well, that's not really what we're talking about right now. Let's focus on the issue. And the idea that actually they not only overlap, they're intimately wedded. But the other thing is that a lot of the rhetoric opposing global warming solutions is sort of hiding behind economic hardships. The idea being, the mythology that if we have tax credits for low energy cars or for cleaner cars, then those are tax breaks for the rich, and the poor guy can't buy the electric vehicle anyway. There's a lot of that rhetoric, and I think it's important to get across that it's not as though you have to choose. I would hope if we did have to choose, we would make the sacrifices necessary to deal with global warming. But in this case, what we're saying is it's not a sacrifice. It actually gets better. And then the old Vermont adage that money you avoid spending is a form of income. Implicitly, it's equal to income. And since there are problems with the clean energy and with wind, people hate the ridgetop wind, people hate solar collectors in the fields nearby, that this is no problem. Weatherization is a global warming response that actually makes life cheaper and has an immediate individual benefit. It's not just the sacrifice we make for the planet. So I think I want to thank Senator Westman for his remarks and just add my 2 cents worth on it. Thank you.
Senator McDonald?
I've had a tough time following this, and it's the median that's the problem, perhaps. But we've been learning about how money flows through the system, and we've seen some graphs that shows us, and then we're told that the graphs doesn't include a few things. And the witness is well versed in this, but I believe we are looking at a subset of something. We're looking at the poor, which is a subset of the homes that need to be weatherized. And homes that need to be weatherized is a subset of the 30% of our challenge to be carbon free for thermal use. Weatherization only covers 30% of that. And this is a useful exercise to learn how we're dealing with this narrow slice. Have we as a committee coalesced around what the problem we're trying to solve is, or are we still looking at the fingertips and then plan to look at the arms and eventually look at the torso, or?
It's, well,
I
I
the
don't know who
questions
that,
Senator Westman is asking are appropriate for Appropriations Committee and us to make sure that there's no hanky-panky going on, or that the money for this subset of the subset of the subset is being well spent. What is our committee seeking to produce as a result of this testimony?
sure. Well, since I asked folks who are here with us this morning to come in, I'd say my goal was, so we're really looking at weatherization and, well, we're looking at saving, we're reducing emissions and saving money hand in hand. And where the audience that we're focused on at the moment is particularly for low-income Vermonters.
Okay.
So transportation.
This is a useful exercise for focusing on low-income Vermonters, and I'm trying to put it into a context of how we're going to use this information, where are we going to go to use the information? Okay.
So I would say in terms of program design, if we look to grow our low-income weatherization plus our market-based weatherization, so 80% AMI and up, we're going to need to learn more about that segment in order to bring more money and work there. And then I think that we've expanded the circle of our work in terms of being more comprehensive to say, through the people we're partnering, through the folks that deliver these services, let's also see how we can bring transportation into those discussions as well, so that someone can reduce their expenses and emissions related to transportation. So I think that's the big chunk that we haven't been talking much about in past years. I'm not answering your question.
Well, I said, go back. Rich Coward asked us to think about this differently and to look at the 100% of the stuff we have to do by 2050 and to help our colleagues and to map a plan how to get there. We're taking a look at a subset of that, something that seems to be working, maybe would be tweaked, but it's a subset. How do we, between now and crossover, what do we put out that takes in the picture of what we're going to do between now and 2050? Or are we simply going to ignore focus on what's before us and ignore the rest of that stuff until someone comes and tells us you have to do something about the rest of that stuff? Are we going to be the sergeants in this, or are we going to be the people that tell the military what the hell we're going to do? Yeah.
So we sometimes get stuck on our metaphors. I'm not sure what our rank is going to be here, but my goal is in the bill we do that we take existing programs that we already have, low income and moderate income, and grow them and put ourselves on a path to do that for sure. We also would expand our counseling services to include transportation, since we know that's more than half the cost and emissions. So let's roll that into this sort of one-touch model that we've been learning about, whether it's pure sort of weatherization assistance project or it's something for moderate income people. The other piece is when we look at developing funding streams that we'll return to next year, one of the things, so Rich Coward's proposal on a clean heat standard, I think my sense is one of the things we can charge that work group with and charge the PUC with in terms of developing a tariff, let's just call it a tariff for a thermal, well, rather than get into the naming parts of it, that work with the PUC to develop a tariff would anticipate including a clean heat standard, by which I mean that for fuels, liquid fuels delivered that have less carbon intensity, you might not have the same level of assessment. There'd be lower fee. If you have clean heat, it's clean heat.
Mr. Chair, that's exactly the sort of question hasn't been answered yet and it requires our pursuit and understanding, and so we can share that with our colleagues as part of the overall goal. The witnesses we have today are extremely competent and detailed in doing what they do now, but our challenge isn't to spend our time on rehashing and refining what we do now. I believe our challenge is, what are the things that we have to do that we haven't even been thinking about, that Rich Coward has said, if you don't think about this, there are places where maybe money could get us towards our 2050 goals.
Right.
And we shouldn't be doing one thing, and then when we're stopped and say, my goodness, everything is weatherized, aren't we great? How do we do the next two things? And people turn around and go, huh? You haven't been thinking about that?
Yeah. Okay.
Now you bring that up? Yeah. Okay.
So
Thank you.
My sense is we're going to be doing both from now on.
We don't have time to do both. These folks are doing one of these things already pretty damn well, and they need to be listened to and overseen, but the rest of the stuff we are ignoring right now.
Well, okay, so we're not trying to talk about transportation and heat in the same conversation. We're trying to understand this program because we're asking, right now there's a 20% increase proposed by the governor's budget. We've had in our committee discussion said, great, but we're looking to do 20%. And then 20% and 20%. So 20% 4 years running is doubling, and that's a lot of change. So we don't want to wreck the system we currently have by asking it to do too much too fast. We want to support them to be able to do more. And my sense is we're trying to learn.
The problem isn't doing too much too fast. It's doing too little, too slowly, and too incrementally. And I'll stop because the witnesses are here to tell us what they know about, which is a small fraction of what we have to deal with. So I'm ready to listen.
Can I just say something?
Yeah, Senator Westman, please.
And I'm reluctant to. There's two paths here. There's one, and Senator McDonald is clearly talking about how do we change out the energy sources and I totally get that. But on the functional side with people, we have built silos. So if I'm looking at the whole pot and I say transportation, thermal, and in the governor's budget, they've got 10 million for solar development in community solar projects. But we're looking at each one of those in a silo. We also look at the way that we deal with people in silos. We treat the poor differently than we treat people that are middle class, and we treat people that are up the scale. So how do we blend the system so it all in the services that we offer is seamless? So we need to work on figuring out how to have cleaner energy going in, but the function of how we deal with the people to get that information out and work with them ought to be seamless too. And we ought not to be training people that are low income counselors in a way that there's a lot of things that all the way through the economic system, if you learn about something, is transferable. Somebody that's at 75% of median is not that much different than somebody at 85% of median.
Okay, so plenty of room to grow. If we can grow faster, of course, I think there's probably everyone here would love to do that. And so how fast we can grow is really, let me restate it that way. That's another way to ask the question. I did want to just double check on the chart, like the last chart we saw. So 13% administration, is that at the state agency, or does that include that in the budgets, the grants that flow down to the CAAs, the community action agencies, that you're allocate, that also includes administrative overhead. So their 13% percent is part of your bigger pie that includes 13%.
Yes, that pie chart includes OEO costs as well as the cost at the agency level around administration. It's not so different than nationally what it just costs in this field.
Yep.
So yeah, but that chart includes both.
Okay.
Senator Bray, if I might I just
Yes, please.
want to add a couple things. One, I do want to say that I think what we do, and I really appreciate Senator Wesson's point that our program is focused on a certain portion of the population based on income, but what we do is very comprehensive, and we are constantly evolving and changing the program and constantly adding on things to have a comprehensive approach with low-income households. I think that's a point well taken by statements from members of your committee, and that includes all of these add-ons that I'm talking about. We don't walk away from a home just because it has a home repair issue that we can't solve with our weatherization dollars, right? We know that that's that moment where we can have a big impact, and we, I think that weatherization team in Vermont does an exceptional job of leveraging other resources and pulling together sort of a comprehensive approach with households. So I just really want to make sure that's well known. And then I would also offer, and this is, wearing my hat as the Office of Economic Opportunity, where we, part of our mission in the whole office is really to think about equity and income inequality. And I do think there is a piece to be said about targeted universalism. So I really appreciate the statements around we need a universal approach around transportation and weatherization and all these other pieces. I think there's opportunities to think about what that universal approach looks like. And I'm a fan of targeted universalism, which also says that when we think about the equity goals, that we do need targeted approaches to reach different populations. And so I think there's some value in recognizing that as well. So I respectfully just want to offer those into the mix of your very robust committee conversation this morning, which I think is great.
Right.
I did have some additional information you asked me to present on training and technical assistance, and I'm happy to talk more about that, but I'll defer to you if that would be useful.
Sure, no, it'd be great to go on to that. I do have a couple questions as you pull that up or whatever. One is just the overall structure. So I don't really know to what degree your direct employees deliver these services versus you actually implement all these programs through others. So are there state employees out there weatherizing, or what's the relationship between organizing the work of others and delivering the services yourselves? You're muted, sorry.
Sorry about that. Yes, so OEO, and this is true for all of what we do at OEO, we do not deliver direct services to Vermonters. All of what we do is through grant administration or management of grant programs. So the weatherization program is sub-grants to agencies. I know 4 out of 5 of our weatherization programs are community action agencies, but in the Northeast Kingdom it is NETO, Northeast Employment Training Organization. They're not a community action agency, just to clarify that. But all of the work that's done, direct service work with Vermonters, or the services that are delivered, are all through those agencies. We have in Vermont a low-income weatherization program that is largely crew-based, which means that those organizations hire crew technicians and crew chiefs and energy auditors, and they deliver the services rather than subcontracting, although they do subcontract a great deal for other services, sometimes shell or insulation work, and sometimes heating technicians. So they do subcontract for a lot, but they do a lot of the weatherization installation work themselves.
And does any of your programming currently address transportation?
No. Although some of our agencies are very engaged in that work,
Right.
and they can talk. I think they have spoken with you about that, but the low-income weatherization program does not focus on transportation.
Okay. but Office of Economic Opportunity, state office, do you have another person, in your organization and that's their thing?
No, we don't have a grant program that's explicitly focused on transportation. When we do administer core funding for community action agencies, and they're engaged on a range of topics, including transportation sometimes. And we certainly sit in on conversations and make linkages when there's conversations around transportation and equity. But we don't have a grant program that we administer that focuses on transportation.
Okay. And one more, it's around LIHEAP. So one of the incentives for someone to act and do this work is in order to save money, which I think probably everyone wants to save money and be more comfortable. I don't know to what degree anyone receives. Is there a maximum percentage of your annual fuel that LIHEAP is allowed to provide?
So I don't administer the LIHEAP program, so I might defer. I'll try and answer generally, but I might have to come back with you on questions about that. The LIHEAP, the fuel assistance program, I don't think there is a maximum in terms of, generally the fuel assistance program does two things. It supports supplemental fuel assistance, in other words, just helping low-income Vermonters pay their heating bills, and there's also a crisis side of it, right? So if you run out of heat and you need assistance there's a crisis component to it. I don't know that there's any limitations on the amount that can go towards a household, but I certainly can, in federal statute or like limitations there, certainly the program is structured and there are some limitations within the way the program is designed and implemented in Vermont. I'm happy to follow up on that and provide you more information.
Okay. And behind that question is just, I'm wondering if there's any disincentive to participate in a low-income weatherization program if someone else is paying your heating bill.
No, I don't think so. There was not at all. We don't have, I think there would be a disincentive if we said once the home is weatherized, you're no longer LIHEAP eligible. That would be an enormous disincentive, but we don't do that. And so, I think one of the challenges is that, we weatherize homes, people move, and so, LIHEAP is tied to the household and their needs in a given year. Weatherization work is done on the home. So we don't, I think we would be very much opposed to a policy that said if your home is weatherized, you lose a LIHEAP benefit.
Yeah, no, I wasn't contemplating that. I just wondered if the benefit itself reduced interest in your program. That was what I had wondered. Okay.
No, in fact, it's one of the ways that we prioritize households for weatherization. I think, people don't, the LIHEAP benefit comes nowhere near covering 100% of someone's heating costs. So even if a household is receiving a fuel assistance benefit, if we weatherize the homes, they reap the benefit of that in reducing their energy costs. I don't think there's any disincentive there.
Right. Thank you.
So this just, because you did ask us to talk a little bit about how we approach workforce development, I think I've said before to this committee that our focus is really on training and technical assistance on recruitment and retention within our program, that we look to the larger field of workforce development to sort of support growing the pipeline. But, so this is a little bit, in the previous page, it kind of shows that we spend about 6% of funds annually on training and technical assistance. We've increased that as a percentage of the total over the past few years, and we're more now on par with what other states are investing. And part of that is in recognition that we're continually asked to scale up this program, and that's a really important part of it. Training and technical assistance, I think, as you all appreciate, is how we ensure that we do quality work, and quality work is required to actually achieve the energy benefits. So part of our training and technical assistance funds is one of our positions at OEO, but also, other states, I will say, do have like a formal weatherization training center. We're not really at scale in Vermont to have enough funds to support like a full-time training center. New York State has a training center, for instance. we have invested a lot of capacity within our own program to do sort of more of a train the trainer model and develop our own curriculum. And sometimes our agencies are sending staff to those regional training centers. Occasionally we'll hire outside trainers to come in and do specific training on topics like QCI or pressure diagnostics, infrared scanning, and so on. You know, mostly training and technical assistance funds, they support maintaining the required certifications. We also subsidize the first 3 months of all newly hired crew technicians. That's because we really recognize those first 3 months are a lot of on-the-job training, and there's a lot of other required training that happens during those first 3 months. So that's just a part of how we approach the program. And then I think, you know, it also supports staff in attending some of these other required training. So part of our TNTA money is, you know, when staff time is taken away from a job, we charge it to training and technical assistance, right? So that's part of what this funding is just supporting. You know, looking forward, we are looking at perhaps contracting for a full-time weatherization trainer, and we're going to continue to develop on this train the trainer program model as well. I think, you know, what's not in here also is continuing to connect with our colleagues at EVT and Efficiency Vermont and VHFA and others as they're building out additional, you know, workforce development initiatives. Are there a way to better leverage those to support building the pipeline for the low-income weatherization program? Open to thinking about that. So just kind of wanted to lay out a little bit how we're investing our funds around training and technical assistance, and happy to answer other questions.
Great. And if we were to ask your group to do not just 20% more next year, but 20% more the year after that, that sort of 4-year doubling pattern, is what you were just showing us scalable? And, you know, are you thinking that's possible if you have an appropriate level of support, or are there obstacles beyond the money that we should appreciate if we're asking you to grow a program that robustly, that quickly?
Yeah, I think, and we've laid this out in other time periods, what some of the challenges are to scaling up, and not to say that we don't support scaling up. I think the question that you're asking is a really good one, is what are the risks and what are the challenges with that, so that we can kind of get ahead of that, right? And I think, you know, you probably consistently hear from folks that workforce development is one of them, right? If we scale up too quickly, then the cost of doing this work increases astronomically. I can just think of, and this comes from, I think, Dwight, you pointed this out to me, is like the asbestos contractors in Vermont. There are not very many contractors in Vermont that do asbestos removal remediation. And, you know, if we scale up too fast, we're going to need to be pulling in contractors from regionally, and the cost to do that work just goes up significantly, right? So I think how we scale up matters in terms of the cost part of this equation. It's not to say we couldn't do that, and we couldn't, you know, pull in workforce from other places, but it just increases the cost. So I think that's part of it. I do think, you know, hiring, training, and retaining staff, you know, we've seen a boom and bust, and I think this committee appreciates that, you know, we need to be thoughtful in terms of the ramp up, in terms of how we sustain that, and in terms of the ramp down. It's hard for programs to have confidence in ramping up if they don't know the funding's going to be there 2 years out, 3 years out, because you're asking them to train and invest in hiring people that then they're going to have to let go. So it's a little bit of a boom and bust that we want to try and avoid, but I know that folks are all sort of paying a lot of attention to that. I do think, you know, we've laid out and work with EVT and some of the reporting they've done, and with DPS, and in prior memos to this testimony in the legislature, you know, what it would look like for us to scale up at certain levels, and certainly could do some of that work for you all again. If the question is, can we do 20% next year and then add 20% the year after and the year after? Yeah, I mean, I think we can, but I think those pieces that I'm putting out there are very real in terms of the cost of scaling up too quickly. But yes, we certainly can be doing more, and we're prepared as a field to do more. And some of, a lot of what we're talking about can scale up. The other piece I'll just name is, our home weatherization assistance program funds, we have some requirements statutorily around DOE and LIHEAP and our weatherization funds, and these add-on programs like home repair and vermiculite remediation, those are costs that we need to cover with other funding sources, and we are able to leverage some of those, like V-Lite, for instance. But if we scaled up significantly, there is a need to find some funds to do those other activities that aren't allowable under our other funding sources. So we did, for instance, in the the governor's one-time proposal for the $4 million that you all are weighing in on, we did ask for an allowability that some of that one-time general fund be allowed to cover some of these additional costs, like vermiculite remediation. So just to kind of keep in mind, us, it's a very technical piece, but as an implementer, that's what I'm paid to do, is think about how would we implement it, and those are the kind of things that come to mind.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for filling us in. We don't want to be we don't want to be engaging in wishful thinking, right? We are really serious about the bill names a 10-year commitment. I honestly think that once we start, it will be far longer than that, and we'll continue to build something that is valued across the board by everyone. And so we're earnest in looking to grow the program and continuing to support it. Not interested in having us all use bridge funding and then walking off the end of the bridge like a diving plank or something. All right. So any other questions for Ms. Phillips? Thank you very much, and we'll stay in touch. So next Wednesday is going to be it's going to be Workforce Wednesday for us, just to let you know. So we're going to be having people in to learn more about what the challenges are to grow their, well, let me just recast that more positively, what the opportunities are to grow their programs, so that as a collection of programs, we can, in an orderly way, have a higher level of work. All right. With that, I'd like to turn to another partner in the ecosystem of delivery, Ms. Biddle of NeighborWorks. Good to see you again. And you sit in a little different position than all the community action agencies, but you're delivering. So it's good for us to have another model to look at. And can you tell us about what you do and how you compare to the community action agencies? And with a growing program, what can NeighborWorks contribute to that?
Thank you very much, Senator Bray. I have to make sure you can hear me. Yes, and it was important and valuable to listen to the testimony and the discussion so far today. I'm hoping that I can answer Senator Westman's question about seamless services to residents. When they're ineligible because they're above 80% AMI. I'm hoping that I can help Senator McDonald understand what we can do to achieve the big goals, what it would take to really go big with answers to the challenges in this issue. And Senator Bray, I want to say, yes, we could grow our program 20% year over year. We've actually done models in our own shop. They would sort of wallpaper this room, the spreadsheets that show how we could grow our program year after year 20% to achieve those goals. So I'm very excited.
And as part of your presentation, can you also, probably it's in there, but can you also tell us how you're funded and how that is like or unlike how the community action agencies are getting funded on similar work?
All right, well, the Heat Squad is a program of NeighborWorks of Western Vermont, which is an affordable housing program. And we discovered through a very small pilot program many years ago, 2010, that energy savings for low-income and moderate households was the fastest way to homeownership affordability. It was achieving our mission using other tools and resources to save households essentially $1,000 a year in most cases. So with that experience, we applied to the Department of Energy during the last stimulus round, and we received $4.5 million on a bet that we would retrofit, we would provide energy savings services to 1,000 households in Rutland County in 3 years. There had been 24 households getting energy savings above the 80%. I have to make clear that our customer base is always above 80%, primarily between 80 and 120. 60% of our customers fall into that range. But anybody who is qualified for the CAP programs, we send them there. We work in tandem with our local CAP agency, referring people back and forth. So that should answer that seamless question. We indeed did achieve 1,000 households in Rutland County. And I just want to sort of leave you with the picture. That means 1,000 households in Rutland County since then, every year, are saving probably $1,000. That is $1 million a year. And as far as workforce development, I point out every time we complete a project that costs an average of $8,000, we put money in the pockets of our local contractors. So in the time that we were working in Rutland County with the grant, we put $8 million into the pockets of local contractors. That continues today. We've expanded our program. The DOE funds ran out in 2014. I have to say the money flow to our organization is it's a hustle every year. There have been years when NeighborWorks has subsidized the program, but we've been also grateful for funds from the SEED program, GMP, when they merged. We have VLIGHT funds. We've had a Northern Borders regional grant to start up the Heat Squad in the Northeast Kingdom. We have had support from Efficiency Vermont, of course, and we've also been the beneficiary of a loan from the state treasurer for our revolving loan fund, which is one of the aspects of our program. Our revolving loan fund, we use some capital from the Department of Energy, then the state treasurer. We are also, and I'm always accused of burying this lead, but we are it's called the CDFI. We are a certified lending agency qualified to receive direct grants for capital lending from the U.S. Treasury to underserved communities. So I should highlight, because I haven't done this well in the past, any funds we receive from non-federal sources can be matched by the U.S. Treasury in a grant of capital for the benefit of our community. In our case, to be loaned to households below 80, because that's our target market as a CDFI. So I got that out in time. We have expanded regionally. We're now in 8 counties, including, as I say, the Northeast Kingdom. We've had the same impact, the same sort of explosion of participation from our program. I think the numbers were there were 24 retrofits in the Northeast Kingdom the year before we started, and we've just completed 140. What it means, what this proves, what this illustrates is that when, as Sarah was saying, when she calls them efficiency coaches, and we call it the Heat Squad, we have 3 currently auditors on staff who go into the house, into the home, do an inspection, a test in, sit down at the kitchen table with the software that shows the homeowner what needs to be done, what the cost will be. We help the homeowner find the contractor. We help the homeowner until the very end of the project when the rebates come from Efficiency Vermont. And that's been our magic touch, that hand-holding, that assistance, that technical advice on a science they don't understand, et cetera. That's why we think we've had such success in getting households that had not normally been participating in the energy saving program. So to date, we've completed 5,000 audits across the state and 2,100 projects are completed. So I just remind you that's 2,100 households that are saving $1,000 a year. I'm rushing because I know you're getting short on time. As I say, right now we have 3 auditors full-time. We have 2 schedulers full-time, 1 outreach person part-time, and access for any participant to our $18 million revolving loan fund. We've made a significant investment in that Heat Squad team. It includes a very sophisticated software program that we were able to afford because of the DOE funds. We have a fleet of cars, if you will, because they're on the road all the time. We have a lot of equipment. We've done training, et cetera. And as I say, we're serving 8 counties. One of the things unique about our workforce development that I wanted to share with you all, in the Northeast Kingdom, with some help from Efficiency Vermont, we experimented, if you will, last year, whereby our certified home performance auditors reached out to local contractors, builders who are not certified by Efficiency Vermont, have not gone to the expense and the time and the investment to be certified, but they're qualified builders, and they had customers who were doing an addition to a house or a repair to a roof or any number of things. And had they known and had access to the information that we have, they could have added efficiency measures to that project, and the contractor therefore could get a rebate for their customers, for their homeowners. So we've reached out to those local contractors, and we have an arrangement with them whereby we do the official testing, and we do a work scope with the contractor and the homeowner that includes the efficiency measures and the rebate opportunity. We oversee the work done by the contractor because we're ultimately responsible as the certified auditor. And then we do the test out on that home so that we certify to Efficiency Vermont that the savings exist. And that way we've drawn in a great many more homeowners and more contractors and made work for more contractors. This was particularly helpful in the Northeast Kingdom because at the time we were starting up, there were not too many certified contractors there. And again, we're talking an average of $8,000 a project. So this has been a revenue maker for the local contractors in the Northeast Kingdom, and we're doing the same everywhere else we go. We believe, therefore, that the workforce is there if the work is there, and we've proven that on a small level. But we think that there's a lot of opportunity in that system, and so does Efficiency Vermont. So I'm jumping ahead. If we were to receive additional funding, the kind of funding that we had back in the days when DOE was generously giving us a grant, or with some assistance that we've had along the way from other funders, or a piece of the new appropriation, we could make a huge difference again. We've done some sort of estimates. If we were able to add 2 more auditors along the lines of our 3 current professional system, we could cover the state minus a heavy concentration for Chittenden County. We would still serve Chittenden County residents, but we wouldn't be able to cover it quite as effectively as we do everywhere else. It's a heavier population, and they have different energy sources. If we had $500,000 to add grants for the benefit of the customers in the 80 to 120% AMI range, we think we hit the sweet spot. Our experience shows we hit the sweet spot, whereby an $8,000 project is going to cost the homeowner approximately $3,000. That's achieved by Efficiency Vermont having rebates up to $3,000, and $2,000 more would go to those households from this fund that we are recommending be allocated for this purpose. So in other words, if a $500,000 grant would provide $2,000 to 250 homes in a year, and we believe that could be done with the additional Heat Squad staff and the additional rebate or incentive or grant to the moderate income households. It's that point at which they go, sure, we'll do this. Thank you for making it possible. Thank you for making my home safe and affordable and warm. And thank you for making it possible for us to stay in this home and be healthy.
Well, thank you. And the plus 250,
yes,
based on 500,000 more for grants, then you would also need money on top of that for the auditors, right?
Yes.
So what would the total cost be if you were to grow your program by about 250 units a year?
Well, I think we could, yes, at least by 250. We would also add additional customers above 120. We have a number of customers who can afford the process, but just simply don't go through with it because it's so confusing and time consuming. So we would. I don't know how many more customers altogether we could add, but it would be more than 250.
Okay.
I've made an estimate. We've made an estimate that each new additional auditor with the sort of startup investment included is about $200,000. And that startup investment, as I say, is software licensing, equipment, some training, some, mileage, or we find that owning a vehicle is more cost effective than paying mileage. So $200,000 in the first year, it's about $140,000 a year to continue the service. So after the first year, the investment or the required funds go down. And with 2 more auditors, we could cover the rest of the counties, except, as I say, a thorough coverage for Chittenden County would still elude us.
Okay. So can you say how many homes you're doing in, I don't know if 2020 is the right base year to use because of the COVID interruption, but so pick whichever recent year is a better base year. And then how much, it sounds like we're basically talking, this increase you're talking about sounds like 500K that flows through in terms of grants, and starting up with 2 more auditors to expand your service territory, roughly 400 in year 1 and 300 each year thereafter. And so I'm just trying to have a sense of what a baseline is and what the increased capacity looks like numerically.
I would love permission to give you that answer when I have a chance to look at it carefully.
Sure.
Our annual numbers vary because we're in one county or an additional county, or there's been a COVID or whatever. And I would be happy to show you, some real statistics against the circumstances that we were working with, just because it will show if there's an investment, there's tremendous impact. And
Sure.
I would love to show that to you in a graph or even a narrative. But
Sure.
Need more.
That'd be great. I mean, I hadn't asked you to, but I suppose what I should say to you and Mr. Zabriskie, Mr. DeCoster is, if we could, we're here to learn today, but the follow-up in part for us will be sort of a request for proposal. Like
Okay.
if you're, if you're, we'll just use it as a baseline increase, because for the moment of, if we're saying 20% more, what is it? What is that? What does that cost? And if you say, well, actually 20% more is less than we could do, then maybe you could add in a second, version. And here's how much we reasonably think we might grow on top of that with how much additional resource. Okay, well, great. Thank you very much. It's great to see you again. Oh, one quick question on the side. One of the funding streams we've talked about, but not received complete information on, is that with an increasing appreciation of the health benefits to homeowners living in a weatherized home, as well as decreased emissions for the community at large, that there's a genuine connection between health and doing good weatherization work. As I understand it, Rutland Regional Medical Center worked with you to take care, to basically prescribe home weatherization for some people. I don't know if they had COPD or chronic asthma or what it was, but some sort of pulmonary condition that had them returning to the hospital repeatedly, which is a very expensive place to go. And that someone said wisely to you, can you cure the root of the problem by fixing the home that's contributing to their ill health? Did I get that story right? And
that's absolutely right. And not only that, but the hospital actually invested some of their own resources in our, with a grant that we did then can match from the CDFI program, because they estimated that the financial contribution would be a financial savings on the medical end. We don't have a large sample to prove this, in the most medical way, but we certainly have experience. We were called into homes that were, full of mold and moisture, and it's very clear that those are triggers to those respiratory conditions, it's very effective.
okay. If you can look at, when you're putting together sort of your proposal, if you can assemble some, I don't want this big burdensome, but some quantitative information for that would be helpful, because one of the longer term things that we want to look into is, can we partner with CMS and provide a way for basically home weatherization prescriptions to be written that may be more cost effective than sort of traditional medical model approach to handling pulmonary disease. So
yes,
great, thank you.
Yes, and there are national studies where there's a higher number in the sample, and I can sort of reference and get my hands on some of that for you all. We're a small population. We're a regional hospital, but it's irrefutable that this has a very direct impact on health benefits.
Okay, great. Well, good to see you, and thank you for helping the committee out. And we look forward to learning more when you have a chance to follow up with us. And with that, let's go to Mr. Zabriskie, who's going to win our committee's frequent flyer award this year. I'm not sure what the prize is yet, but we'll work on that. Morning.
Good morning. I would actually defer to my colleague, Dwight DeCoster, who has some prepared remarks, and I think it would be more helpful for him to brief you before me, if that works for you.
Sure. We're happy to go with the flow here. And so thank you, Mr. Zabriskie. Mr. DeCoster, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Senator Bray and other senators. On behalf of Paul Dragon, the Executive Director of CVOEO, and the 25 hardest working staff members you can imagine of CVOEO weatherization, thank you for having me today. I'll follow Sarah's lead. You saw the numbers, and she had alluded to the fact that we have other sources as individual agencies that we're able to tap into and leverage. So I thought I'd start out by giving you a brief synopsis of some of those and what they mean for us. So obviously, Efficiency Vermont is a large one for us. We are the field implementers for their program on electrical efficiency, light bulbs and such, cold climate heat pumps, cold climate heat pump hot water heaters, and refrigerators and that sort of thing is what we do. The second one is we have a partnership with Vermont Gas. CVOEO is in a position where Vermont Gas territory is primarily our territory, and they don't expand outside of our territory. So we're the only organization, the Community Action Program, that has Vermont Gas. And their program pays for roughly half of the installed measures, air sealing, insulation on the thermal side that we put in and is in their territory. So that's a huge benefit for us. They were partnered with us on a 63-unit building that we just finished in Middlebury Commons, which is a low-income elderly housing in Middlebury. I'm sure you're familiar with that one, Senator Bray. So, and then you've heard the V-Light or Vermont Low Income Trust for electrical. We get a wide variety of funds from them. They help us with the vermiculite problem. Each year they give us some funds. And recently they've given us funds to, and this goes directly to the carbon greenhouse gas reduction, where they've given us money to replace wood and pellet stoves with EPA rated wood and pellet stoves for low-income Vermonters. That's been a huge benefit for a lot of our clients. We also receive funds from the Zonalite Trust Fund. We act in place of the homeowners in this because it's a very complicated process. And I believe it's right around $4,300 eligible funds for those jobs that require vermiculite abatement. Unfortunately, with all the other, they're so expensive that we can only do, with our given funding, we can only do 6 to 7 vermiculite abatements per contract year. The average cost of those is around, right around $14,000. Very expensive work to abate zonalite.
Can I ask a quick question? You had mentioned asbestos when we were chatting before.
Yep.
Is asbestos contained in vermiculite, or is asbestos an entirely separate issue?
There is an asbestos issue as well on pipe wrap and certain things in the home, but the vermiculite is an asbestos containing insulation material that was mined out of the Libby, Montana W.R. Grace mine. Very nasty, and so we see that a lot in homes. I'd like to know who the salesman was in our area, because they did a great job at selling vermiculite insulation in the 60s and 70s. And the final one is, we mentioned various health related programs, pilots that we've done. We did one this year, called it the Falls Prevention Program, and it was for elderly and clients with issues where they have a fear of falling, have fallen, or are at risk of falling. We partnered with Medical Center Hospital of Vermont, OEO, Department of Health, and EVT to see the cost-efficient benefit of, if our crews are already in the home, taking care of some fall measures like grab bars, handrails, certain things like that. So that's, we're looking to see what other programs that we can bring to our low-income Vermont clients. So that's pretty much the extra funds that we bring in. One other one I mentioned, one of our greatest challenges is homes that are not ready for weatherization with a maintenance deferment, whether that be a roof, vermiculite, knob and tube wiring is a huge one, bulk water issues, There's several others. There's really not a lot of funds for that. And sometimes we have to defer those homes because putting air sealing and insulating that home, the measure would not last that long based on the conditions of the house. We are lucky in CVOO that we have a small fund of called Argosy, which is a private charity organization, and they give us about $50,000. So we are able to leverage that into the job so that other jobs otherwise would be delayed or we'd have to walk away from, we're allowed to do. So those are all in addition to the HWAP, Deep Department of Energy funds that we get.
Is it ever true that you review a home and say the most cost-effective and healthiest thing to do is replace this home? I mean, I know that it sounds extreme, but I don't know if you get to that point.
We have done that with
Right, you mean-
very few mobile homes over the years. Mobile homes are particularly challenging in some instances.
Yep.
We unfortunately we have to walk away from some homes because, I mean, for instance, I'm well aware of one in my hometown of Underhill. Actually, it's in Jericho, but it's in Underhill Village, where the abatement cost was $40,000 because of rehab work that had been done on the home and spread vermiculite from one end of the house to the other. There's no way our program can go in there and do that with, have an abatement cost of $40,000.
Right.
And there's others where the home is in such poor condition that it's not feasible for us to do the work. Sometimes that's a case of hoarding, which is a lengthy process, as you're probably aware of, to remediate. But there are circumstances where we have to walk away from that home. Vermiculite is one where we delay most cases rather than defer until we get funding. We keep them in an order.
Yep.
We
Yep.
deal with those as we get them. But unfortunately, we have to walk away from some homes, and our staff absolutely hates to do that.
Sure.
So, but anyways,
Senator Campion?
So what happens in that kind of situation when you're walking away from a home? I mean, the family is basically left there. Are there any options for them that you know of where they can reach out, get a loan for something else? I suspect a lot of these folks are low-income Vermonters.
they are, Senator, and we are very good, as you mentioned, the One Touch program. Our staff is very good at getting them to the other agencies that can help them out. We're lucky to have Champlain Housing Trust, which is a grant program. We're also familiar with USDA, and there's one other that's slipping my mind right now, where in some cases we can get those folks to take care of those problems. And once the problem is taken care of, they can come back. The one issue and we did a pilot a few years back where we combined mobile home program, our financial futures program, and the weatherization program to look at past deferments. And what we were trying to do is counsel those homeowners to the point where they could get a loan. Some of them are even 0% or 1% loans, depending, and then fix the deferral and then have weatherization go in. We found that our target population, or the under 80% folks that we serve, AMI, are extremely debt averse. It was not a successful pilot in some ways, but it was successful in that we learned this key item about our population is that they are extremely debt averse. They do not want to take on that debt. So even if it's 0%. So
That's actually really important information for us to know going forward on a number of fronts. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Senator McCormick,
you're on mute, sir.
your mic is not yet going.
Okay, sorry. Why is vermiculite and asbestos a problem if it's just left in the walls? Does it escape? Does it get into the air? Or
If you've ever seen vermiculite and if you've ever done gardening, vermiculite is a very lightweight puffed material that is friable. It's easily crushed. It's easily released into the air. So it's not a healthy environment. We're not trained to work in it. It's similar to lead or asbestos. You have to have special training, special equipment, you have to be depressurized to work in it, filtering. It's not something that we can do. But also just disturbing it, you're putting it into the air. And in most cases, we actually leave it in the walls because that becomes very, very expensive to remove it from a closed cavity, which is a wall. If it's in an open cavity like an attic, it's still expensive, but less expensive. And that's where we're going to make our biggest bucks, is in the attic, the upper surfaces. And it's easy to get at, it's less expensive, and we can abate that, seal off the rest of it, and put in air seal and put in fresh insulation. So we feel that we're making a huge difference in that respect.
And what happens when the house eventually gets torn down?
It needs to be, and then you mentioned before about replacing one, we were actually involved in putting in a Vermont where they had a home that it had asbestos in the flooring, it had vermiculite insulation, and that was a case where it was more cost effective to tear it down, replace it. So that house had to be torn down in a specific manner so as not to spread this vermiculite insulation and cause a problem with the house that was being put on the slab, the Vermont. So it still has to be abated at tear down or deconstruction. But
That's an expensive tear down, isn't it?
it becomes an expensive tear down. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay, but just leaving it isolated, you could actually live with it, right?
As long as it's sealed up and you're not disturbing it, it's not a great thing. I'm personally, my boys are about ready to buy houses, and I'll go with them and make sure there's no vermiculite because it's a very expensive proposition. And unfortunately, like I said, there was a really good salesman in our area, the northwest part of Vermont, and Bing Crosby was actually the spokesman for Zonalite when they were selling it.
Selling it?
Yeah, so.
He didn't know. Sure. Thanks.
Senator Campion?
Where is vermiculite found in nature? I mean, it's actually a rock, right, or something?
It's a mineral that is mined from the earth, and the one. Go research Libby, Montana, and look at the
Okay, that's
cancer
what you
rates.
mentioned, Libby, Montana.
So,
Yeah.
and it's actually then they mine it from the ground, they heat it, it puffs up like popcorn, very lightweight at that point, very easily pourable. Commercials used to say you could easily pour it in, but what we find a lot is you find 1 or 2 bags have been poured, and there's still 6 or 8 full ones that they never poured because it's so dusty. Yeah. So
Thank you.
A quick question, Mr. DeCoster, on budget. Can you help us? We don't need precise numbers, but just scale, rough numbers. The OEO grants that come to you versus all these other sources of income to support your work. Can you give us like ballparks for? We don't know.
I'm going to say 75% HWAP, 15% DOE, and the remaining 10% comes. Obviously, Paul can chime in. His ratio is probably a little bit different than mine, but it may be more 70. 70. Yeah, maybe a little up. Those are ballpark.
Okay, thank you.
So
great. Anything we had some questions. I don't know what else if other prepared remarks you had or things you want us to know, think we should know.
Well, we were asked also, Jude asked me to talk about workforce development and budget and funding money flow. So I just wanted to
thank you.
Talk a little bit about the expected budget increase for what we're expecting, that about 20% that you're talking about, and what that means for us, some numbers on the ground, so to speak. So those expected costs for us it's about 50 to 60 more housing units. We're doing about 200 a year now. That would be about 50 to 60 units with both HWAP and DOE increases. The average household takes us about 112 hours. Now that is single family to high end or high volume multi-family units, about 112 hours crew labor hours to complete. And that's just the crew, the installers. So 50 times 112 hours equals 5,600 crew laborers, or 6,720. We get about 1,500 hours of on-the-job time, minus training and admin stuff and travel time and all that. So that equals to us about either 4 or 5 crew members that we have to add. Now, right now, we're lucky we have the in-house capacity to Bruce the energy audits to do this. We have 4 auditors on our staff. I should mention that we cover Chittenden, Franklin, Grand Isle, and Addison counties. So we have the auditors to do that, but right on the border now. If we went any more, we would have to hire another auditor. The auditors, we have to grow. As Ludi mentioned, there's a great amount of knowledge in the building science that goes into an auditor. We like to grow them from within, from our crew members. And we'd also, with that current level, we would have to add a 32-hour admin assistant for the application intake and eligibility determination. So it would be anywhere from 5 to 6 employees for us to do that 20%. So what does that mean for us? 2 years ago, I was in front of you and I mentioned that at that point we had a 2.5% unemployment rate. We basically had to steal all use from other employees from other employers. Now, as I read this yesterday, we're at a 3.1% unemployment rate, which is and there's 20,000 people that have left the workforce over the last year. So is that accurate? I don't know. So, and also with unemployment benefits, it's a challenging labor market to bring in new employees. And we're very lucky that we have very minimal turnover. Been here 5 years. We've lost 1 employment to retirement. Nobody else has left. Because we recruit on our mission, natural resource preservation, lower energy burden for Vermont's most vulnerable, and lowering the carbon footprints of each home we work on. That's what we recruit on. We also recruit on the strength of our organization in that we are able to take care of our employees quite well. It's year-round work, year-round construction work in Vermont is important. We have strong benefits, strong leadership that has an emphasis on improving employees' life while carrying out our mission. That's what we have to sell, because quite frankly, the work is not good and it's not easy work. I say that I send my employees to hell every day. In the summertime, it's a hot hell. In this wintertime, it's a cold hell. So, you got to understand that. An example of the labor market, we're trying to hire a subcontractor administrator. I'm offering that out at $22 an hour. We interviewed 4 candidates. 1 was not fully qualified. 1 was not a good fit for our organization. The other 2, we offered it to the other 2. They turned it down at 22 hours plus full benefits. So we're in the process of re-advertising the position. As Sarah also talked a little bit about how we develop our workforce. There's 3 paths I see it, and we need to take advantage of all 3 of those paths. The first one is individual agent responsibility. Weatherization, it sounds easy. We're doing air sealing and insulation. It's not. We can truly screw up somebody's home if we don't understand the how and the why that we're doing it. So we think that we need to raise one of our crew chiefs to a permanent training coordinator, and he's responsible for all training within the house. And we will train to the OAO, the Home Weather Assistance Program's technical manual, which you can find on OAO's page, very, very specific to how we do our job. That's an on-the-job training program, so to speak. We've had great luck.
Yep, sorry, I'd like to ask a quick question. So we had some testimony from builders, remodelers, and you probably know the Sion group down in Brattleboro that does training on this sort of work. They're saying, well, building science is evolving. People need to keep up with it. It's it's more scientific than you think, and it's harder than you think to do it well. And when it's not done well, there are moisture problems. So I just that was their number 1 alarm they wanted to really ring the bell on, was moisture issues if it's not well done work. And of course, everyone would want to avoid that. And especially if we're going to grow a program, we want to make sure that we don't inadvertently grow a program that creates problem. As you do too, I'm sure, but we want to be directed about this. Are you satisfied that the protocols you all have are avoiding, follow that kind of guidance we were hearing about so that you avoid moisture problems? And can you just speak a little bit about that one?
I feel that our protocols are evolving with building science as building science evolves. Obviously, a lot of what we do now is learned from things that have happened to buildings over the years and bad weatherization or bad building procedures that were at that time were technologically correct with what the current building science was. So we can't rest on a specific document. It has to change all the time. So as it stands right now with current building science technology, I believe that we are doing everything correctly.
Great.
But again, it takes one slip up and you have a moisture problem. So
yeah. Do you ever have to go back and do after the fact fixes because of an error?
I would say that less on an error, more on as you heard about the energy coach, critical position. We are changing the way your building works and the way that you need to live in it, and that's the education piece is absolutely critical. We are lowering the air changes in your house. You may cook without turning on your kitchen range. You may take a shower without having a ventilation fan. Once we tighten up your building and insulate it, it's absolutely critical that you use those tools to maintain the proper moisture levels in your house and get rid of the excess moisture. It's absolutely critical. I would find that when I go, and I handle all of the client complaints myself, I feel that that's part of my job to shield my employees from that. We learn from it, but I'm the one that goes out there, and it's more often a client re-education of how they need to work their house to reduce those moisture problems and we're finding that those clients are not using the tools that we give them. That's what I find more often. Yes, occasionally we do 200 homes a year. Yes, we're going to occasionally do something that is not correct. I will say that I have one of the best QCI guys, quality control inspection guys in the state, and he is brutal on my crews and making sure they do the right thing. So yes, but occasionally we go back for a fault.
Sure. When you go back and you have this follow-up and it turns out that it's a human behavior problem, do people have a eureka moment and they go, oh, I guess I really do have to turn on my range hood and my bathroom fan when I do these things, and that's it? Or maybe not so much?
I'm going to say a yes and no, Senator. Some see it and they go, oh yeah, okay, this is what I got to do. And others are like, I've been living this way for however long, and it's not going to change.
Right.
So
Senator
it's a
McDonald.
constant class.
Yeah.
Are you saying that when you have mold and various things after the job, it could be because the job was done in a faulty fashion, or it could be because the homeowner was not adjusting to the change?
Yes, Senator. Yeah, but more often than not, I'm going to say it's that there needs to be more client education or some refresher training is what I'm going to say.
That was new information to hear, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. And in the event that it was done improperly, what has become the protocol or the usual ways that such things are being remedied today by the participants? Or is it, if it was done poorly, it's just ignored? What's the state of flux there?
If we did improper work, and we will fix it. It's simple. If we cause the problem, we fix it.
Yeah. And how does that go for the cross section of contractors?
I can only answer for the work that is done by CVOEO because that's what I'm responsible for.
Okay, so it's hit or miss?
I don't think so. I think within the weatherization program, it's a very strong commitment to what we do and getting it right.
In the cases where it has been done, is it hit or miss, or does law prescribe anything?
I don't know the answer to that, sir, honestly.
Thank you. Thank you. Good answer. Yep.
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
all right. Please continue, Mr. Coster. Thanks.
So the second area that I was just getting into that I wanted to, that has worked well for us, there's two programs that unfortunately are not in running right now because of Senator McCormick. Do you have a question? Okay. There's two programs that are not running right now that we've got some really great employees out of. One is Resources Weatherization Training Program that just they stopped doing their program last year, and then the Vermont Works for Women Weatherization track has been very successful for us. We have 3 ladies that we employed 5 years ago. One just retired to go be a grandma, which we miss Judy a lot, but the other 2 have been promoted. One is now our assistant production coordinator, and one is now on our admin team handling all the intakes. We would love to see them start back up again. And the third one is, you heard Sarah talk a little bit about on her training presentation, was the OEO funded weatherization network trainer, which would be a traveling trainer, so to speak. When an agency has a new employee, they can go down there and work with them and do their training, but also provide some centralized training as well. We wholeheartedly feel that all 3 of these approaches need to be taken to ensure that, you know, we have to take every opportunity to train our folks and get them up there. Because one of the things is that we estimate, and this is just CVOEO, we say it takes a year of on-the-job training and being on the job before you would know all of our tasks, the how and the why, and you can be an independent worker and fully efficient. So 1 year. New employees, unfortunately, slow us down quite a bit because you have to train them on the job, and somebody has to be teaching them. It drives up our job cost average. OEO has helped us out and gives us some training and technical assistance money to do that with now, which should be a huge help. They are a great partner for us in our program. So that is my prepared remarks. I'm at your call for questions still.
Okay, well, one quick question is, do you ever send any of your staff to the Vermont Technical College program that Efficiency Vermont helps support? Is that ever part of your, or that's more for private contractors who go that route?
It's more for private contractors. We've done in-house training, but we also are members of NYSWADA, the New York State Weatherization Directors Association, who have a great training set up. They also do a lot of our auditor and coach continuing ed and initial education. So as far as crews, we've done mostly on the job training here. But that's been 1 employee at a time, which is much more manageable than 4 or 5.
Sure. And from our earlier discussion, you know that we're interested in becoming more comprehensive in terms of working with low-income Vermonters on the exact mission you laid out. Thanks for your precise statement of it, to include their transportation costs and energy burdens related to transportation. Is that something that you're able to address at all now through any of your programming?
Currently, our funding and through the state and DOE and our private funding, we do not have the resources through those funds to do anything with transportation. I know that Paul can probably speak to it. I think they have a pilot program going to address the transportation issue. Currently, right now, we only deal with thermal and electrical, the demand side of things.
If funds were made available, is that something that feels like it could be compatible with what you're doing, like you know, sort of a welcome expansion, or does this feel like, yeah, we're not really the right people to expand to include that?
I would love to be able to include that, but I think that we would be more in bringing renewables to, I think, would be a better fit for my program. Would be to bring some sort of renewables, the ability to bring renewables to our clients, like solar or something like that.
like the low-income solar program.
Correct.
Right.
Something
Okay.
along those lines.
All right. Well, thank you. I mean, this is part of what we don't want to be, you know, we want to have for clients receiving services as well as you all that deliver these services. We want to help you do the job in a way that supports you, and not that we're saying that we're just pushing things your way, you know. So
With the One Touch program, and very often we're the first folks in the door. That we're the entry level for a lot of these folks. This is the first time they've ever, you know, worked with us, especially with our elderly population. You know, they don't want to take help, but they need to. I think we could definitely, you know, if they haven't, you know, get them moved towards transportation, or make the referral, or make the warm handshake to the folks that are eventually. I think that would be a great use of our energy coach as well.
okay, great. Well, thank you. Any more committee questions for Mr. DeCoster? All right. So Senator McDonald.
I would ask for maybe a suggestion, but one of the things that we need to worry about when we're trying to market weatherization door to door is how do we, one of the threats to that is members of the public saying, I got my house insulated and it hasn't worked. We have mold, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Do we recognize that as a problem? And do we have a solution that we can say to homeowners, yes, that used to happen, but it doesn't happen anymore for the following reasons. And people to whom it happened, this is the remedy that is being put in place. Can we say that today? And if the answer is no, then what would you recommend that we do so that that is no longer a barrier to marketing the weatherization program that everybody here is working steadfastly to advance?
I'm very hesitant to say that it's not happening today, Senator, simply because there's a lot of work out there that I don't control and that Paul doesn't control. For instance, if you simply insulate your attic and you don't air seal it, and you have a moisture pathway to the attic, or a moisture pathway through your walls to the condensing surface, you're going to have a moisture problem.
Forgive me. And once again, Mr. Chair, I've asked the question incorrectly, because we've had several witnesses that have explained this to us almost as well as you are. As regulators and spenders of money and taxers, what can we do to remedy what has already happened for the very reasons that you've mentioned, so that we can put to rest any future buyers that there is, that we, in law or in our programs, that it isn't going to happen to them?
I'm going to say education and enforcement, sir. Educating, like Efficiency Vermont, their forgive me, I don't remember their quality network, excellence network, whatever. I'm not drawing it up. And then an enforcement policy. Every day it bothers me. I drive from Underhill to Colchester every day on Route 15. And every day I drive by brand new homes being built. And I read the roofs in the moisture, in the snow, and it's an affliction, or whatever you want to call it. And I look at brand new buildings being built, and I can see from the roof pattern, I know the melt pattern, I know exactly what the moisture problem is in that building. There's some duplexes built by my house, in the firewall in between. You can see it clear as day. Right on the roof line, there's this line that goes right up and over, and Paul can jump in too. It bothers me because we're building brand new buildings and we're not doing quality weatherization work. You can see it. There's a line where the snow melt pattern is, and it's that party wall in between that they never air sealed. So moisture is getting into an interior wall. It's going right up through the attic, and it's going to cause a moisture problem on the attic of that, on the moisture problem on the attic of that building.
Thank you, and it's terrific to hear that it's you can see it and you can find it, and perhaps the committee will spend a little bit of time in the future about how do we stop this, because it undermines the program that is being done, and it is an expense that should be avoided, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you very much.
Dresses me out on my ride into work every day.
Yes, I'm familiar with this habit. I walk in our neighborhood and I'm always looking at the snow melt on everyone's roof, or where are their icicles, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, and so just by way of reassurance, part of what we've been talking about is code, and not just code, but code enforcement.
Correct.
It's like it's a favor to no one to create a code that you don't enforce. Can I ask you make the same informal request I made of Ludi, which was, could you just pencil out briefly what a budget, what a budget increase looks like to you, and then what your baseline work capacity is now and what it would be with 20% increase. And then I guess I would ask the question that would go along with it is, if we continue to find money and make it long-term money, so you'll see something starting next year that's not just bridge money, but a 10-year pathway. Can you also imagine another 20% on top of that? Like, how many 20% before you think that it's just too much?
Well, I think I laid it out for you, sir. So, well, not laid it out for you, but I said that's another 50 buildings. 20% is another 50 homes. That's 5 to 6 employees per. That for every 100 buildings or every 80 buildings, I would add an auditor to take up that load. Right. And then all the other plumber. Unfortunately in Vermont, we don't have enough plumbers. We don't have enough heating contractors. We definitely don't have enough abatement contractors. So it expands exponentially, and that's usually the holdup, are the other trades. We can control what our crews do very well. I brought an in-house heating tech in. I have a heating tech on my staff. I'm the only one that has it, to flatten out our wait time. And it's worked very well. But there's a lot of outside subcontractors that will hold us up. And that's, we really have to figure out this lack of workforce issue in Vermont. I think that will be the stumbling block. As far as a 20% increase, I think I can honestly say that I will guarantee you that I can take 3 years of that. And then it goes from there, but each year it's exponentially. I need more space. I need to open subspaces, and it becomes, that whole checkers or chess. I think it's a chess game of what comes next.
Right. Okay. Well, great. So thank you very much. And with that, I guess we'll apologize, committee. We didn't take any breaks. So if someone needs to take a break, just step out and come back, because we're closing in at a short morning today. With that, I'd like to return to Mr. Zabriskie. And if you've heard the testimony this morning, I don't know if you can give us the same sort of, thank you, Mr. DeCoster, to give us the same kind of, if we're talking 20%, what's that mean to Capstone, and in terms of hiring and cost, and what does it mean in terms of capacity?
Well, thank you. Paul Zabriskie, Capstone Community Action. I think just sort of hearing the some of the testimony this morning, 20%, I think is we can readily handle that. The challenge with growth is there stability that goes along with it. So when things go on and off, it's very hard to grow because people understand that there's the backside of the curve, and they're not willing to invest their time in something that could drop off or leave other opportunities. Very often we're trying to hire people who are already employed. So stability is really important, and I can't underline that enough. I think I'd just like to touch on a couple of things Dwight spoke to, and there were questions around. Senator McDonald, I'll tell you my opinion is that having contractors, all contractors, register and sort of an Office of Professional Regulation where there's some accountability, that if somebody crosses the line, their ability to work in Vermont could be jeopardized. I think that is a powerful influence for contractors to own their mistakes and correct them. I've been in this business. Capstone has done over 3,000 homes under my time as director of the weatherization programs, both in the low income and in the home performance environments. We've made mistakes. Thankfully, less than 1/10 of 1%. But when you do, it's a disaster. And you learn from them. And I feel really good about the training we have and our ability to implement steps that prevent those errors. So I think, we always go back when we get a call, because it doesn't really matter whether it was our mistake or not. It's our client who's got a problem, and our job is to address their problem. And it may not be a problem that we can fix or a problem of our making, but we're going to investigate it. We're going to understand what the building science is behind the issue that they have. I think for the broader marketplace, the contractor base and trades need to raise their game. There are many that operate at a very high level, and there's some that don't. And so I believe that registering contractors is a step towards the accountability needed that comes at a much lower cost societally and to the state than implementing enforcement directly. There may need to be investigators dedicated to that office of registration, so that there's somebody who's available to problem solve. But I think another point that was made earlier that I'd just like to tie what weatherization is doing to the larger marketplace goes to the model that Vermont adopted back in the 90s for weatherization, which is we put an assessment on fuel and we turn around and we invest it directly into buildings that reduces fuel use. And on a cost per ton of carbon abated metric, it becomes positive. It's not a cost. It actually it has a return on investment going forward. And so a similar model in the broader marketplace, where we are assessing pollutants and using those revenues directly towards reducing their consumption, reducing their emissions, produces that positive value in terms of cost per ton abated. So I think it's a model that has worked, and I think Rich Cowart and RAP did a really excellent paper a year or two ago when they sort of looked at the issue of carbon tax and said, yeah, carbon tax does a thing, but actually this other thing you're already doing is much more effective and delivers value to Vermonters in a tangible way, creating a positive cost per ton averted. So I think that's a good thing in a model that there's a million iterations for how it could be implemented. but I support them. I'll go to sort of one other piece, a couple other pieces I'd like to touch on. One is OEO's role as administrator. I can't say enough about how they stepped up at the beginning of COVID. And, we have people in homes every day and face-to-face with people in their buildings. And when the state basically had to shut down or shut us down, OEO stepped in and supported us to keep our workforce in place. So when things opened up again, we were able to be back in the field. And we were actually back in the field very early because we're already trained in most of the personal protective behaviors and equipment that make it safe for us to work in those homes. But I think it's kind of one of those things that's largely invisible and almost forgotten in the rearview mirror, but an incredibly important role that OEO played in keeping us operational and keeping our workforce in place. Going back to that, the underscore stability, because it's so important. I think the broadening the scope of weatherization, particularly our coaches, the word I haven't heard today is motivational interviewing. And if you're not familiar with that concept, it is an approach to interacting with somebody in a way that draws out what their interests are and helps then frame the information you're trying to hand off in a context that they understand the value to them. So it's about an educational process that involves listening and listening skills. And I think that's a really important piece of what expanding on the concept of coaching to look at all of the carbon emission challenges that families have requires motivational interviewing. It requires a training and a technique that really goes to addressing that family's needs and being able to communicate it in language that they understand and helps motivate them to make the changes that they need to make or want to make.
And is that your standard approach for everyone who's working through Capstone, that your counseling or one-on-one sessions, everyone's had this kind of training, so that's basically the way you all do it?
Well, I think it is something that we need to we can strengthen. It was absolutely part of the original scope when we started coaching, getting a grant during ARA, and we developed a program in cooperation with OEO, and we can do better. And I think that part of OEO sort of addressing the broader mission, I think it will come to bear. I'm not sure that it's something that you need to do in terms of the language you put in statute, but I just want to.
Is it something we might need to do in terms of putting money to create the time and expertise to help the trainings happen?
I think yes. That we're going to need training. We're going to need to arm people with the resources and so there's some gaps there, and
sure.
And so yes. I could go on. It's really late. I'm sort of interested in any questions that you may have.
Sure. Well, I think, you've heard the committee's interest in, we've been having this dialogue with you all session long, really, about comprehensive services delivered in a respectful manner that empowers the clients the customers being served, right? And we've taken that to heart, and we're also acknowledging that our focus heretofore almost exclusively, not quite on weatherization, has been leaving the elephant in the room, transportation, unaddressed. So this year we're trying to evolve the program in such a way as we launch to a higher level of service period addressing transportation. And it seems as from what we've learned, I'm getting the impression, I don't know if this is true, we weren't able to hear from all your partner action agencies yet, whether they have any programming that relates to reducing transportation costs for the people they work with.
So we are piloting a program called Mileage Smart that helps
Yep.
people get high efficiency vehicles. The model for that is to roll it out so that all of the community action agencies and all of the weatherization coaches have access to those resources. Now, they're not necessarily engaging in the minutia of qualifying somebody unless they're sitting with somebody who's needs support to say, put an application on the web. But so generally speaking, my view of it is weatherizations needs to be trained in the program and have the resources to hand off so they can speak articulately about it and help people address their goals. It's not necessarily, I don't see weatherization staff, engaged in conversations about specific cars or something like that. It's more identifying the need and making a handoff to refer that, as well as we do when we come across medical needs or other service needs that we address with the One Touch program.
Okay, I'm regrettably, I'm drawing a blank that one of your colleagues was in, who walked us through what happens when you help folks out with identifying a car and getting a loan and getting better terms, and so transportation assistance and education. So is that sort of a handoff that happens within Capstone?
Well, that's a handoff. Currently, that's a handoff that happens within Capstone as we build out the model, and this pilot is literally 5 months old. So we're still sort of working through Mileage Smart to really understand how we can most effectively deliver that service. And it's also working with car dealers and the whole inventory of cars available. There's a lot of moving parts there. But the goal would be that there's a warm handoff, and that what we have in weatherization is an opportunity to have an eye-to-eye conversation with somebody across their kitchen table, and so our ability to sort of address people's needs and direct them to the resources, or as I said, it maybe is helping people enter their information into an application online when they don't have IT in their own home. So we can assist in a lot of different ways, but ultimately the goal would be that the weatherization worker is versed in understanding where carbon emissions come from and what resources are available to help folks with transition.
Okay, so this sort of broader financial literacy, transportation piece, it sounds as though the counseling that happens now is being carried out by someone who's delivering the weatherization program. They're aware of these other things, but they don't have all those tools in their tool bag to say, okay, well, I can help you with a family budget, and I can help you look at your transportation costs, and I can help you look at your thermal costs. And you just mentioned another one, like, are you also being served by IT in such a way that you can support employment opportunities or something? Who knows? School, kids in school. Right. I'm sure the list could get very long.
The list could get very long, and we currently do not have that capacity built in. It is something that, again, I think as we continue to evolve to meet the challenge, we would like to diversify. I don't know that we'll ever have, credit counseling as a piece of the skill set that an efficiency coach is going to do. I think that is a kind of unique skill, and digs into a family's budget at a deeper level than we're able to. You run into the challenge of just how much can somebody absorb in one sitting, right? And so I think our primary focus, as Dwight mentioned, is really, we're going to change your house. Let's make sure that we don't have a problem with your building because you don't understand how to operate it. So our efficiency coach first mission is help people understand how to make sure they understand how to operate their building. And all these other things we would like to be able to make referrals and address their needs without having people go into overload where their eyes just roll back in their head. And
right. Okay. Well, great. All right. Well, we'll curb our enthusiasm for doing too much.
Well, I think where Senator Westman was headed in terms of really bolstering up the community action agencies to address counseling more broadly is something that weatherization dovetails into really well. So it's a mesh, but I think anyway.
Right. Well, and it may, I'm thinking aloud with you here. It may well be that sort of the point of mutual interest and contact could be weatherization. Like someone might say, gee, I would love to spend less just heating my house. But the relationship established there might create an opportunity to get to those other things over time.
Yes.
Such as transportation and budgeting or credit, whatever. All right. Well, thank you again for coming in. Committee, any other questions, observations you'd like to share, validate with Mr. Zabriskie while he's here again this morning? All right. Well, then I'd like to thank all our guests for coming in. Yeah.
I actually have one more thing, if I may have
Sure.
2 minutes.
Yeah.
I would like to, I don't know if I can share my screen. I put in the notes, or maybe Jude can bring it up. A graphic that helps get me out of bed every day when I sort of confront the existential sadness of what climate is doing right now. And that is a flow chart of how energy is used in Vermont. And I put 2 links in. One is to US consumption and one is to Vermont consumption. And I'm not able to bring them up onto the screen here. So anyway,
which one do you, I can pop one up in time.
Okay.
Which one would you like?
How about the US one first?
Okay. Energy flow charts 2018, energy flow charts 2019.
The 2019 one. So this is a graphic produced by the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And what it basically, walking you through it, you have sources of energy down the left side, and the scale of those boxes on the far left side is sort of the magnitude of the amount of energy. And then on the far right side, you have energy services and rejected energy. And the pink boxes are uses of energy in residential, commercial, industrial, and transportation. And the yellow box in the middle is electricity. And what I want to point out is the gray bars that emanate from those boxes that end up in the upper right-hand corner in what's called rejected energy, because that's a proxy for carbon dioxide. So on the choosing electricity, when we burn natural gas, coal, biomass, oil to make electricity, we're converting chemical energy into heat energy and then into mechanical energy to turn a turbine and then into electrical energy. And 2/3 of the energy are lost to the ethers in those gray bars. It's that changing that formula and reducing that heat loss is incredibly important towards solving our climate issues. If you look at transportation down in the lower right corner, you see a similar thing. You see the petroleum coming in as a fat green bar, and the lion's share of it is leaving as waste heat in the gray bar going out the other side. When we electrify transportation, we eliminate the gray bar largely. So the challenge before us is achievable because there's so much waste in the system that's leaving through that giant gray box in the corner. And if we look at the Vermont chart, it looks a little bit different than the US profile. You'll see nuclear disappears. We no longer have nuclear, and much more of our electrical generation is coming from hydro, wind, and solar. So we're not burning so much in Vermont. So you've still got the US chart on your screen, but
Okay.
there's another link there.
See if, okay,
One that says 2018.
got it. A little slow on the screen share.
No worries. So the Vermont chart, shows much less waste. If you look at electrical, our waste to used energy and electrical is sort of the inverse of what it is nationally. We have a relatively clean electrical sector. Our challenge in transportation is in the lower right-hand corner. And there you see, our numbers are smaller because it's Vermont, not the whole US, but the pattern is very similar, where we have a big green bar coming into the pink transportation box in the lower right corner there, and a big gray bar leaving as waste heat, and that much of that, as I said, could be a proxy for carbon dioxide. So I share this because I'm going to come back to you to talk about the heat rate. I'll do that in writing and not try and do that today. But our challenge is achievable because there's so much waste, and the technologies are all in place to make this transition. And almost all of them are both cost effective and create a better world. So I thank you for all your work. I appreciate the enormity of the challenge you've taken on. And I just want to say, I think we can do it. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Thank you. Yes, sir.
just that last chart was, I wish it were up there right now. But when you look at the waste heat from thermal work, and you look at the waste heat from transportation, it seemed that the gray bar for transportation was more than double what was coming out of residential thermal. It's double the amount. And when we tackle residential, the year in which you tackle it, that gray bar that goes into rejected energy shrinks and gets smaller. In transportation, the year that you tackle with electric vehicles, that gray bar doesn't shrink until for over a 12 or 14 year period.
Excuse me,
Okay.
but you have 1 minute to get to the floor.
So
All right.
rather than shrink the remaining limit, I will ask that you mail me that chart, please. Thank you very much. To the State House, and we'll
It's
get
on
to
our
the floor.
website.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thanks.
It's on today's today's
you.
document file.
Thank you.
So
Ready
thanks
to
very
sign
much.
off? We'll get it.
All right,
I'll
so
get it
quick,
reviewed.
a quick note to committee, we're gonna need to work on budget for Tuesday, and I'll reach out to people because there is, the quote unquote fast track budget. We have a chance to do some work there and we need to vet the ideas as a committee. Thanks.